The hope that it's given this team, I think, is tremendous, and is probably the best thing that you could ask for.
Would you fall for me like I fall for you?
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about the Boston Celtics, and wow, what a resurgence this team has had prior to the All-Star break. Obviously, this team made some moves, and we'll get into that here in a minute, but this team started off the year abysmal. I mean, I was literally probably a day away at one point from making a trade video, or not a trade video, but a video on like just the dysfunction within the organization at that point and how everything was kind of going wrong for them. I had the thumbnail made and everything with Marcus Smart on it. In fact, if I go back and try and pull that up, which I'll do real quick right now, it was just a dumpster fire. I mean, you had Marcus Smart coming out and making comments about how he didn't like the passing from, or the lack of passing, I guess I should say, from his teammates. You had all this other stuff going on with just like inside the locker room, on the court. Their record was not very good. They weren't even in the playoffs. Yeah, I had it like huge problems. Big red X on the Celtics logo with Marcus Smart looking, super happy, obviously, next to that. But yeah, I was really close to posting that video only a couple months ago, and they've really turned things around. I mean, this is a team that starting the year, I had very different expectations for than how they started off, right? Honestly, I thought Jason Tatum was going to be in the MVP conversation for the first time in his career this year, and I thought that this team was going to I thought they were going to make a move at the deadline, but I thought that they were going to be kind of in their usual like top 4 seed-ish area, and that they were going to potentially be able to make a trade or something to push themselves into even a higher seed, maybe for like a Bradley Beal or something like that at the deadline, and then Jason Tatum would be in that MVP conversation, with it kind of being more of a wide open conversation this year. And I think if they had done that, he would have been in the conversation. And I mean, even now, it's not like he's playing awful. This is a team that, has finally kind of gotten their stuff together. They've moved up to 6th in the Eastern Conference at 34-26. And, they're continuing to try and work their way up there. And a lot of that is due to the trades they made at the deadline. But, Jason Tatum, I mean, you look at the guy, he's averaging 25, 8, and 4. And I think, couple more points per game or whatever, a little bit of a higher seeding, maybe a little bit less of a rough patch at the start of the season. And who knows, maybe that prediction would have been right. Now, I never ended up making that video, but it was definitely something that I, at that point I was heavily considering. Just because, honestly, I just truly believed it to start off the year that he was going to have a super good shot to, be able to capitalize on kind of the openness of the MVP race this year. But I guess if we kind of take a look back, if we're going to be kind of talking about the start of the year, what we saw was this last offseason, Danny Ainge stepped down as the long-term president and GM of basketball operations and all that for the Boston Celtics. I mean, he had been their general manager for a long time. I mean, you think back to the Brooklyn trade where Paul Pierce was sent there and everything like that. He was orchestrating that, where they got all those picks. I mean, he's been there. He's a very long tenured general manager, was one of the longest in the league at that point, I think, and one of the most well-known, especially, for that Brooklyn trade and the amount of draft picks he'd gotten and everything like that. And especially being, having played and then general managing for one of the most historic franchises in the league. He steps down, and Brad Stevens, actually their head coach, steps into that general manager role, something I think kind of shocked a lot of people. And so we were kind of interested to see where things would go, and he was quick. I mean, Stevens was, quickly, kind of thrusted himself into the fire, only a couple weeks after, stepping into the general manager role. He shipped off Kemba Walker, obviously a big part of this team, and their first round pick, who became Alperen Şengün, in order to get Al Horford, right? He wanted to get rid of the Kemba Walker contract. We ended up seeing Kemba Walker get bought out by the OKC Thunder. Not something we see typically from that team, so that was kind of interesting. And he brought back Al Horford to this team, a player that he coached in the past, a player he was familiar with, and a player that they, had moved on from them in free agency, and now they wanted back. Just because, he probably bring some stability. We'd seen him kind of do a little bit better in OKC than he had with Philadelphia, which I think we all kind of expected. Just fit-wise, it makes more sense. And so he ends up going there to the Celtics. And then we see him go and take that Gordon Hayward trade exception, which a lot of people were really wondering what was going to be used for that. Were they going to go after a star? He uses it. He brings in Josh Richardson to the team. Not exactly a huge trade, but he brings him in. And then, he continues to kind of move on with stuff. And this last, prior to the trade deadline, earlier in the season, when things were a little bit past their, full dumpster fire mode, they were kind of getting things together at this point. But we saw my Denver Nuggets actually trade them Bol Bol and PJ Dozier, two guys I was sad to see go. I mean, Bol Bol, I hope he gets opportunity now in Orlando, and we'll get to that here in a second. And PJ Dozier, actually, I have to double check where he has ended up or whatever, but PJ Dozier, he's a guy that has been really decent for my Nuggets for a while, and honestly, at this point, I was like, wow, the Celtics really kind of killed this trade, because worst case scenario, Bol Bol is just a backup center for them. He learns a little bit, maybe gets moved on again. He didn't really have an opportunity to get a ton of playing time there, so it makes sense that they would again ship him later on. But PJ Dozier is honestly one of those solid, 3-and-D guys. He actually, before coming into the Nuggets, I believe he played for the Celtics, if not the Celtics G League team. At that point, he was listed as a point guard. And then he kind of moved in to be more of a forward 3-and-D type of guy for us. Still able to play, at the guard position because he has good ball handling ability, and stuff like that. But honestly, it was a pretty good trade for them. They got rid of Juan Hernan-Gomez, another former Nugget, and sent him to the Spurs. And then the Nuggets acquired Bryn Forbes, and San Antonio also got a 2028 second-round pick from us, so some, trash middle schooler, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, this trade it was kind of interesting. It was kind of one of those earlier trades kind of leading up to the deadline that we always see, one of the smaller trades. And so I thought it was a pretty good trade for most teams involved. Didn't feel like we got a ton of value as a Nuggets fan from him, but from Bol Bol at least, but it was whatever. It was kind of one of those smaller trades. We moved on from it, right? And then at the trade deadline, Boston kind of went crazy. Boston made 3 deals. They shipped out Dennis Schroeder and Josh Richardson, and brought in Derek White and Daniel Tice. Obviously, Daniel Tice, having been on this team prior, is somebody familiar with this team. And then Derek White is, a guy that kind of the oversaturation, kind of something that the Kings had an issue with as well. Why they in part traded Halliburton, which I talked about in my last video. But the Spurs had that same issue of an oversaturation of guards, where there was just too many guys at that position. I mean, just off the top of the head, you got DeJounte Murray, you had Derek White, you have Josh Primo, you've got even Keldon Johnson's like a 6'5" forward, Lonnie Walker. They had Bryn Forbes, and even last year they had Patty Mills on that team. I mean, this team was full of guards, and so it makes sense that they would get rid of Derek White, kind of a guy that he's kind of at where he's going to be probably for the rest of his career. He's probably not going to peak any higher. We've seen him do some decent stuff in the playoffs for them. But other than that, yeah, I mean, not too much probably higher that you'll see out of him. He's kind of is what he is, and we kind of understand that. So it makes sense that he's the guy that they move on from. But this is actually pretty big for the Celtics, because actually since then Derek White has played super well with them, and we've heard how Marcus Smart has kind of said like how he really enjoys playing with Derek White. It's another guy that's going to be gritty on the defensive end, out on the perimeter as like a guard defender, which is good for them. And they were able to get some value out of a Josh Richardson, who played pretty terrible, and a Dennis Schroeder, who obviously we know Mr. $70 million man, or whatever his contract was that he did decline from the Lakers. We know that he signed there, and they were able to get some value out of him as well. I'm a guy that didn't seem like maybe he was going to help them win a ton, because of he almost felt like he needed to be a sixth man on this team more than anything, and maybe that was part of the reason they had some locker room issues, because they did not integrate him into it. Maybe in part due to that potential ego that he'd built up, believing that he was going to be like a $15-20 million guy. Wood maybe he's more of like a 12 million dollar guy, decent player, you know, low end starter or high end backup type of guy for them. And then they also, so in order to get Derek White, they gave up Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, a guy that had been talked about a long time to be traded from the Celtics, because really they never even used him. They drafted him in the first round and never used him. They passed up on some other players that they've been criticized for in the past for it. And then they added a 2022 first round pick, top 4 protected, and gave the Spurs the right to swap first round picks in 2028. So honestly, the Spurs, I think, win that trade pretty handedly, you know, being able to just get those 2 first round picks for Derek White. Kind of crazy that they were able to get that much, or, you know, a pick and a half, you know, depending on that swap or whatever it is ends up being. But honestly, pretty solid from the Spurs there. We also saw them, you know, further on in the trade deadline go and bring in Goran Dragic, and then obviously release him to later be signed by the Brooklyn Nets just a couple days ago. So, and that'll kind of be talked about a little bit more in my next video about Porzingis and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you know, good moves by the Spurs all around, I think, throughout the deadline. And honestly, this was a good move for the Celtics. Yeah, they had to give up those picks, but this is a team that's known to have a lot of picks, and honestly is known to do nothing with their first round picks. So better to trade them for actual tangible assets than nothing. I think this is a strategy you've seen the NFL start to deploy a little bit more as of recently. You've seen when you see star trades in the NBA, it's been happen a little bit more. I mean, when you're looking at the NFL, you look directly at the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams, right? Trading all their first round picks for, you know, guys like Jalen Ramsey and Matthew Stafford to help them win the Super Bowl. And then when you obviously you're looking at the NBA, you're looking at the Lakers trading all their picks for Anthony Davis, or you're looking at, you know, the Bucks trading their picks for Jrue Holiday and all that stuff, and how they were both able to win championships. And so a lot of times I think more and more in sports, if you have a top tier guy, sometimes it's better to get rid of your fictional assets, which is really what draft picks are, until they become tangible and become real players, and just get tangible good players that you already know are good at this point in time. And that's exactly what the Celtics did in this trade in getting Derek White. And then in that yeah, so that, I mean, that was honestly a super good trade for them. And then obviously, like I said, they brought in Daniel Tice as well. But this team has really, I think, kind of come together now. I was watching Jason Tatum's I guess JJ Redick's podcast, where Jason Tatum was on it just a couple days ago, and Jason Tatum was talking about, you know, how that's Marcus Smart issue that kind of at the start of the season, how he was talking to the media and everything like that, how literally the next day they sat down, they hashed it out, and that's those growing pains that good teams have to go through, that sometimes you're going to get in those situations. And at the end of the day, you know, they came to like an agreement of, hey, yeah, we're not perfect, but also, you know, maybe don't go straight to the media with it, but also we just lost the game, so I understand that you're frustrated and you're human, right? And so he kind of talks about how that really got blown out of the proportion by the media, I think a little bit more than maybe we thought it was. I think everybody knew as the season continued on, and as Marcus Smart wasn't traded or whatever, and now the Timberwolves were trying to jump in on that, and I thought that was very smart by them. But you know, the fact he wasn't traded and everything like that, and at this point they're still all together, I think speaks to how that was a little bit more overblown than maybe we thought at the time. And then the fact that this team has kind of gotten themselves back together. I mean, when you look at the Boston Celtics, as of recently, they look, like I said, they look good. This is not, you know, the team that was losing every single game, it felt like, or every other game to start off the year. This is a team that, I mean, I guess if you look at the start of the year, right, so you kind of head back to October, they started off 0-2, and then they ended up winning 2, losing 2, and by the time you kind of got to like the end of December, you were losing more games in a month than you were winning in December, right? You won 6 games in December and you lost 10 games in December, so 6-10 record in just December alone. This team at that point was really at the peak of their oh shit, this is not going well, we need to figure out what we're gonna do here type of stage. But then you kind of head into February, right? And throughout February they've had 1 loss as of this point that I'm recording this. Now I am recording this on the 22nd prior to my Tyrese Halliburton video releasing, and this should be up on the 23rd, which will be the day before they play Brooklyn. So they'll play Brooklyn tomorrow, but they did lose their last game on the 16th to Detroit, following a, let me see, did they win? So a 2-game win streak at the end of January turned into a 9-game win streak. So following a 9-game win streak, they brought themselves straight back into the conversation. And if you're looking at their record right now, we can see exactly where they were. So prior to this 9-game win streak, since they are currently 34-26, they were 25-25. So they were sitting at 500 and are now 8 games over 500 following a 9-game win streak and 1 loss in the last month or so, which is really, really impressive out of this team to be able to do that. And just kind of turn their season all around in only a couple weeks. And sometimes I think we forget that in only a couple weeks, teams can do that. Teams can go from a team that we don't look as a contender, we don't look as even a strong playoff team, to a team that we look at as a strong playoff team, or potentially even look at as a contender. Now, I don't think the Celtics have risen themselves back into contender status by making a move for Daniel Tice and making a move for Derek White. Obviously decent role players. Derek White, I think, will probably come to this team and do exactly what he's done for them in the past. I think, or maybe to a slightly lesser role because of Robert Williams' role continuing to grow on this team, as well as having Al Horford on this team now as well. And then I think obviously we've kind of seen the impact that Derek White's had already, but this team isn't maybe quite back in that contender status, but they're back in that, hey, we have a chance, we can do something. This is a better team than the team that, if you're looking at Kyrie Irving not being on that team, Jason Tatum's rookie year that took LeBron James to 7 games in the conference finals. This is a better team than that on paper. And so, this team, it's kind of gotten themselves back into, hey, we can win playoff series. We're not this team that's struggling to really work together and find a rhythm. We're a team that, we can win playoff series. We can push some of these top end teams to the brink, and they've kind of, I think, given themselves hope for this season. I know in that podcast that I was talking about where Jason Tatum was on JJ Redick's podcast, make sure you guys go check that out if you guys haven't seen it. I think if you're an NBA fan, you've definitely seen it, so I don't even know why I'm saying that. But he was kind of talking about how, his years have he's kind of blinked, and now he's in his 5th season, right? How, that first year losing to LeBron, it was kind of, I'm going to be good at this for a while. But then, the following years of him maybe not taking it as seriously, like, I got another 10, 15 years of this. Now he's in his 5th year, and I think every single year we're going to see him grow even hungrier to win more and more, and to pressure this organization to continue to make winning moves and stuff like that, to, allow themselves to be in a better position to win a championship with him. And I think, them rejuvenating the hope in this roster and giving them the potential to, and I'm not saying by any means that I expect the Boston Celtics to, be your NBA champions when all comes down to it at the end of the season. In fact, I wouldn't even say that. I'd expect them in the conference finals. But the hope that it's given this team, I think, is tremendous, and is probably the best thing that you could ask for. As a player on this team or as a fan of this team, is that you feel hopeful. You feel that this team has some cohesion now. You feel this team has some new life in it, and you feel that whether even maybe not be this season, but next season, that this team's got an opportunity to really make something happen. And then when I'm talking about next season, this team's positioned themselves that, with some of these contracts that they have now, they can make a move, and obviously they still have picks, and now they're showing more of a willingness to trade picks. So maybe that Damian Lillard to Boston that we've all talked about is more and more likely. And maybe it can happen without Jaylen Brown, because in that exact same podcast, Jason Tatum was talking about how he does not want to split up with Jaylen Brown. It feels like he wants to stick with him for his whole career. It feels almost like that Dame and CJ thing, where they're going to stick it out as long as they possibly freaking can. And I love that, because you're not going to find another wing defender that's going to fit next to you like Jaylen Brown. The fact that their skill sets are so similar, he talks about how they can push themselves in practice. And I'm sure that's a big, big reason why we've seen these guys progress so quickly since entering the league. Now, it's talked about how Jaylen Brown has kind of come onto the scene a little bit slower, and what Jason Tatum said about that is actually kind of a brilliant take on it. Is when Jaylen Brown was drafted, his rookie season was when IT was in MVP conversations. He wasn't looked at to be a guy that they were going to focus on playing. That didn't happen until the next season when Jason Tatum came on that team as well. And even then, Jason Tatum was prioritized over Jaylen Brown, right? Obviously being just the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And so, he really didn't have much of a slower start. Yeah, he's technically behind a year or whatever, and yeah, he's not ever I don't think he's got the potential to be what Jason Tatum is, but these two guys are, have the potential to be, a top 10 and a top, 15 player in the league. And if you're able to add a Damian Lillard to that, which it seems like you have the contracts, and if you add enough picks, we've seen if a team prioritizes picks, and I don't know what Portland's GM is doing right now at this point, whether he's going to be the GM long-term or not, we'll have to wait and see. I think that's part of the reason Damian Lillard wasn't moved, because I'm not sure if Portland's management up top is sure if he'll be there long-term. But if they do decide to go in the Anthony Simons direction, we've seen that they've already acquired some players and stuff like that to put around him, that are young players and stuff. Maybe they go in that more of that Houston Rockets direction of, hey, let's just get a crap ton of picks so that we can get young players for the future, or if we need to move those later on once we kind of have a nucleus built and maybe get that final piece to kind of push us over the top, or push us into playoffs contention, or bring our team back together, or whatever it is, whether that be an Aaron Gordon level trade or whether that be an Anthony Davis level trade, then they're able to do that because they have the draft capital and the assets to do that. And so maybe we see Portland going more that Houston Rockets direction, where they'd rather have that than have guys like Jared Allen or Karis LeVert, and in this case, I guess Jaylen Brown, and maybe have those picks. Then yeah, we could definitely see Boston jump into the Damian Lillard sweepstakes this offseason. I'm sure it will be taking over the internet this offseason. And whatever other stars available, I think Boston is primed to attack because of especially the way that the two players have. If they're going to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the contracts they have are going to be able to match, and they have picks, right? So then what you're looking at is, can whatever X star you're bringing in match with these players? Well, yes, they can. Damian Lillard can match with these guys because these guys don't have to have the ball in their hand to be productive. Either of them can shoot, and they have shown a willingness. They want to be that guy or whatever, but they've also had to play with other stars earlier in their career, whether that be a Gordon Hayward, whether that be a Kyrie Irving, a Kemba Walker, etc. They've already been shown that. And yeah, there was turmoil and stuff like that, but that was maybe because they were the young guys trying to come up, and then the older guys were trying to hold their position at the top. Whereas if it's bringing in a new guy, it's about building the team together. And I think now these guys understand that, having gone through that in the past. So whatever star you bring in, I think not only are they going to be more willing to figure out how to accept this role to win, because they're going to be hungrier to win, but they're also going to have already gone through the adversity of not doing so and winning. So they're going to be more willing to. And more stars fit with these guys because they're wings, right? You can play Jaylen Brown at the 2, and you can play Jason Tatum at the 3. You can play Jaylen Brown at the 3, and you can play Jason Tatum at the 4. You can play Jaylen Brown, whatever X star you bring in at the Jaylen Brown at the 2, whatever X star you bring in at the 3, and play Jason Tatum at the 4, right? These guys are very versatile. It leaves you options if you're getting a guard, if you're getting another wing, or if you're getting a big, to add to this team as another star and be able to make something happen. And so expect them to be buyers in this offseason. Expect them to be, making a big fight. Whoever they play I would not want to play the Boston Celtics in the first round right now. That is for sure. I think there's a few teams in the East, if I'm an East team, that I would rather play, that are probably higher in the standings. Like, I don't really want to play Miami in the first round. Chicago, this is their first time in the playoffs in a long time. This is a very new unit. This is a team that's lost their starting power forward for the whole season. So this is a team I might want to play in the playoffs, and they're the number 2 seed. Philadelphia, I don't want to play in the playoffs as the first round, right? Now that they've made the trade for James Harden. But Cleveland, again, a new, unexperienced team in the playoffs, I'd want to play Cleveland in the first round. But I would not want to play a team like Miami, like Philadelphia, like Milwaukee, like Boston, these veteran playoff teams that are hungry to win, and especially, feel in that team that they have the opportunity to win. Obviously Brooklyn is going to be in that same conversation as well, but currently they're the 8th seed, so they're a lot lower. So you're less likely to play them if you're kind of trying to sneak into the playoffs or whatever. Whereas, if Boston continues to rise in the standings, and those other teams I mentioned are all higher in the standings that you don't want to play in the first round, you're more likely to see in the first round. But yeah, I think Boston Celtics have set themselves up to have a much better end of the season than they were going to, and have set themselves up to really be in the market to continue to improve this team this offseason. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed. Honestly, this has kind of made me more interested to watch some more Celtics games as the year kind of winds down, especially with them kind of seeming to get their shit together. Now losing to Detroit is never a good look. I don't think at this point in time, but yeah, we'll kind of wait and see, and we'll kind of see how things go for this team to end off the year. Yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more. It's been your boy Dom, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.